Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Jumu'ah, chapter 62, verses 1 to 11, and we will completely cover this surah today, making progress towards a collective system. I selected this surah because as we will go through it, we will realize that from an individual training, education, and self-development, then it goes towards the collective system. And that aspect will become clear as we go through the whole presentation. These are the references which I used, and this is our contact in case there is a query or question about this presentation or previous presentations. We can leave a message on this WhatsApp number or contact, and then someone will get in touch with them from TOLU-E-ISLAM. This presentation, an overview. This chapter is called Surah Jumu'ah as the word Jumu'ah has appeared in verse 62:9. A number of interconnected points are covered in relation to the establishment of the system of Deen. The scene is set by the declaration that everything in the universe follows Allah's laws and His attributes manifest their glory in this functioning of the affairs in the human world. That is, establishes laws in worldly life. Next, the Quran is sent to provide teaching, training, and help in development of the self, and this is to be carried out by those who make a deliberate choice to tread on this path of Allah, and they are called Momineen. Since death is a fact of physical existence, hence it needs to be analyzed and dealt with effectively in the light of the Quran. Here the example of Jews is quoted who failed to grasp its importance and resorted to injustice in the world. The fact that our death leads to facilitating further opportunities for self-development is highlighted. Those who strive for the system of Deen, that is Momineen, need to come together as and when required and decided by the system to advance towards its establishment by consulting on various precepts noted in the Quran. And this is the focus of this surah, and that is why it's given the name of Jumu'ah. This needs to be done through concentrated and focused attention, avoiding any distractions, always keeping in view the aim of Rububiyyat. Jumu'ah means to come together. It's a collective aspect of the system of Deen. First verse for today's presentation, 62:1. Everything in the universe follows the laws of Allah. Sabbihu lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ardil malikil qudusil azizil hakim. Whatever is in the highs and lows of the universe, all is busily functioning for the completion of the defined program of Allah. For the completion of the program of that Allah, the vastness of whose control and authority is infinite and who has full control over everything, and this authority is absolutely based on hikmat or wisdom. We know it that the Quran, whatever injunctions, laws, principles, attributes it gives, it also explains that why these are important for the human world. Some explanation, setting scene for the collective system of Deen. Here the Quran opens this surah with a powerful statement about the fact that everything in the universe, including the human world, follows Allah's laws. There is no exception in this. To the superficial glance, it appears as if man-made systems are excluded from this statement, i.e., we do not apparently see the laws of Allah functioning in the world which is organized and managed by the human intellect. However, if we look at it more closely and incisively, then this reality dawns on us that the man-made systems are also subject to outcomes as per the law of requital of Allah, and this includes the law of cause and effect in the physical domain too. Because the effects of cause and effect we can see in the physical world. If I put my finger in fire, it will burn. But in the world of human interactions or communal life, we do not see this law as glaringly as putting a finger in fire. This aspect becomes glaringly obvious when we analyze the man-devised system in the light of the permanent value. Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. That Allah does not change the state of a nation until they change what is within their own psyche. The way human choice and intent is applied in the world decides the nature of the world they wish to live in collectively. So whatever world we see around us is because of the psyche of all those who control this world and the collective psyche of those who follow them. It means we have the choice whether to follow the Quran or not, but we do not have the choice to create a world which is free from fear, grief, chaos, and conflict by going against its value system. So Allah's laws are working even within the domain of our collective system managed by human beings. So that is the point we need to keep in mind as we go through this presentation. 4 divine attributes and some reflections. 4 divine attributes appear toward the end of this verse, i.e. Al-Malik al-Qudus al-Aziz al-Hakim. These attributes point to what is coming next in this surah, and we will refer to these as we proceed to explore subsequent verses within the context of Deen. I haven't gone into too much detail of that, just put a passing reference to it, but we can figure it out if we know that what these 4 terms mean. Al-Aziz al-Hakim, we have covered it before as well. And the other 2 I have briefly explained here. Al-Malike, this is the root, possessing power, being in control and possession of something. Also choice and intent and authority. That support on which something is established. In relation to Momineen, they need to acquire this attribute within the context of Deen as a system. This will lead to higher understanding required to manage their affairs. So important over here is that this verse push forward these attributes as of Allah. But from our point perspective, we have to acquire them and then manifest them. And obviously we cannot manifest them unless we fully understand their connotation. Al-Qudus, being free from all faults and blemishes, pure and pristine. When applicable to humans, it means we have to acquire a new self free from all those negativities which we have at a basic level. And this cannot be done without using the light of Wahi. So that is important that we gradually, by acting on the values of the Quran, even within the man-made system, we get rid of all our weaknesses, limitations, and the blemishes within our character, and realize wherever we make a mistake, we realize that this is against the Quran and try to overcome it. Al-Aziz al-Hakim, it relates to power. Aziz means power in simple terms, but it is, of course, has a far wider connotation. And its application in the human world based on the guidance of the Quran. Allah is Aziz and Hakim. That human beings also are Aziz. They also possess power, but they are not Hakim. And we can only become Hakim by using the value system of the Quran. And that is, we use it based on the permanent values. And we need to acquire these 2 attributes together with others in connection with the self-development and the system of Deen. Being aware of our own power and then becoming conscientious in its use within the values of the Quran. See how high level of awareness the Quran is demanding from us before we get onto the system of Deen. And these are the kind of thoughts which should come to our mind that, am I ready for the system of Deen before complaining that Allah is not helping us? Or we are static, we are just at one place, we are suffering from inertia. No, we have to first figure out that have we acquired that self which the Quran is asking us for the system of Deen. Second verse 62:2, procedure noted for laying foundation of Deen. Huwallazi ba'asa fil ummiyina rasulan minhum yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakkihim wa yuallimuhul kitaba wal hikmah wa in kanu min qablu la fi zalalin mubin. The kind of system which is operating in the universe, i.e. everything operating in accordance with the law of Allah, in order to establish this same kind of system in the human world, he commenced the process of divine guidance. This is a fairly general statement included to set the scene for the explanation of the rest of the verse. This messenger is the last link of this very same process. We'll not go into the details of Ummi, and this aspect has been covered before as well, but we can go through the Lugat for more details. Who has come to those people who did not receive divine book before this. This messenger presents the laws of Allah before them, then he makes them understand what the aim and purpose of these laws is. Next, together with this, he also provides them with one such practical program from which the development of their potentials keep taking place. So there is a clear program about which we should be clear within the context of which we are getting training and education from the Quran. As a consequence, due to the teaching and training by this messenger, that nation which before this was on a path of blatant misguidance started treading on the correct path of life. Very clearly, Quran has stated over here, min qablo lafi zalalin mubin, that they were in a manifest error. So those people who think that man can get the guidance even without the Quran, that guidance which is contained within the Quran, they are not right. They are wrong because this is not based on evidence. The evidence clearly suggests that we have nothing within us which can guide us about that guidance which is given in the Quran. Further elaboration of this verse. Understanding this verse holds intrinsic value, leading to comprehending the foundation of Deen as a system. We have seen that the Quran demands intense reflection and focus on its teachings, and this needs far greater efforts at the level of transforming our cognitive outlook than any professional degree that we acquire under man-made systems. Because under the man-made systems, we are only focused on the success which is defined within the man-made system, and that ends with death. Over here, Quran is not only making us look at the world in which we are living, that is the man-made world, holistically, not in parts, completely, and then is taking us beyond our death to the life of the hereafter. This effort is quite different from the academic hard work we do and needs both intellectual and emotive acceptance of Iman as explained in the Quran from the start to its end. So it makes no difference whether somebody is a PhD or even a higher qualification, holding higher qualification. Even a common man who has no education can understand the Iman of the Quran and its system. And that is the important point we need to keep in mind. And that is why Quran says that everyone can be trained and educated and taught hikmah from the Quran. Without inner change, merely reading the Quran repeatedly or even memorizing it will never give us that moment self to which it directs our attention repeatedly. Next, what is noted in this verse is important and needs to be related to the practical experience of setting up a holistic system of self-development quite different from the man-made educational systems. The aim of the teaching of the Quran is to help prepare raw human beings into those with a new life who can fulfill the aim of their creation as described by Allah Himself. I put down raw over here because it makes no difference that how educated we are according to the man-made system, we are still raw when we come to the Quran, accept Iman, do righteous deeds, and then understand the intricacies of the system of Deen. So we need, though it is simple, but at the same time it becomes complex when the time period which is required to go through it. It's a commitment of whole of our life. And of course, it goes on to the next slide. Few more aspects of this verse. Let us now look at the verse in steps. Firstly, after understanding the wahi of Allah, the messenger carries out the targeted function of helping to prepare a jamaat of people for the task specified by the Quran. It means that some human being or beings have to take responsibility for understanding its finer details objectively, and very important, objectively, so that we never ever let our own emotions, our own biases come into it, which are verified by others on a continuous basis using the criterion of the Quran. Hence, the Quran is to be used to acquire that cognitive ability which helps to bring out those latent potentials which are intrinsic to Deen. For example, divine attributes should be acquired and manifested tangibly in the outer world, not by mere words. These are important things because as we go through the Quran, we will realize that how many weaknesses we may have. And if we are looking at it objectively, then we will make an effort to remove those weaknesses within us over a certain period of time. Secondly, such person or persons should have the ability to be highly articulate in order to assist others in comprehending the wahi of Allah and its various aspects which can help those who are willing to strive on this path to be attracted to this uphill task of Deen as a system, an aim beyond oneself. So over here, I put it down that we can only become articulate in expressing what we have learned if we are fully convinced ourselves and we know those aspects which are to be communicated to others and answer their queries and questions which might arise because of what we are telling them. Thirdly, he or they need to understand the science, both cognitive, that is within the human psyche, and visible, that is in the physical world. So because we have to relate both. And that is where the emphasis is, that if I have understood something, then I should be able to relate it from the practical aspects of our life in the outer world. The Quran has pointed to these signs which need to be understood within the context of the era in which these efforts for Deen are being made. So there is no point in going back to past again and again, because the world has gone forward. We are living in a world, for example, highly educated, highly developed, technologically very advanced. The research is going on. There are wars which are very complex as well. So with that context in mind, when we look at the Quran, we have to relate it to them. There's no point in telling them that 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago, this is what happened. Of course, that also provides some kind of a moral context. But today's context is very important, because if Deen is to be established, it will be established in today's world. Continuing further, fourthly, by stating yuzakkihim, i.e. the issue of self-development, Allah has asked us to look at every aspect relating to the development of the self in the Quran, for example, through solid deeds. Fifthly, Quran says, yu'allimul kataba wal hikmah, arranging to provide teaching and education of the book, that is attributes plus principles plus values, through explaining the logic and reasoning of each and every aspect of its value system, so that Momineen become fully convinced of its value within the context of the system of Deen. And this is an important aspect which we are going through, because all of us who have children and family and friends and others, we can always organize a small class for them. And we can experience ourselves by teaching Quran to them and also learning ourselves. This involves learning it as a value system, comparing every aspect of it with man-devised systems and their relative values, and its application in terms of solving all human problems and issues, i.e. the physical and the self. Sixthly, Quran says, وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, remaining mindful of this fact that human beings live a life in darknesses without the light of Wahi, and this was also the state of Jumu'ah Momineen prior to their acquiring this guidance. The Quran says that to these Momineen, that before coming to the Quran, you were also living in darknesses. And that means that we have to recognize these darknesses in the world in which people live without the light of the Quran. Because if we do not, then how are you going to understand the light of the Quran? Why do we need this constant reminding? Because human beings tend to forget, because human beings forget very quickly, as they're always in the present and tend to follow their desires which arise on a continuous basis. They have to learn to continuously remind themselves by using intellect and reasoning in the light of the permanent values. See how high awareness the Quran is demanding from us. And this is not to be scared of or fearful of, rather we should enjoy it becoming more alive to the world in which we live, and becoming more alive to the world we have within our own selves. Next, I've covered two verses, 62, 3 and 4, drawing benefit from Wahi of Allah. وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ لَمَّا يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ. The messengerhood, that is the Risalat of this Rasool, is not confined to the first addressee nation. He is also the messenger for those people who are going to be following them, i.e. a messenger for universal mankind and a messenger for the current generation and all generations to come. And this is important because if we think that this Quran was for that time, since it is in Arabic and it was for the Arabs, then we are confining ourselves by saying or excusing ourselves and justifying that we cannot pass on the message to others because we do not understand Arabic the way they understood. But if we look around in the world in which we live, we can see that despite knowing Arabic and despite having Arabic as a mother tongue, people still do not come to the Quran. Why? Because the issue is about human psyche. Iman doesn't need to know Arabic language or any other language. Iman is an inner change that I'm not happy with the man-made world. I need an alternative system. And that is how we approach the Quran. This is that purpose for which the Quran is kept protected for all times. The process of risalat of this messenger will remain in place for eternity via his ummah through the Quran. All this has been done on the basis of Allah's authority and wisdom. And that is why Azizul Hakim is used at the end of the first verse. The receiving of wahi from Allah is a blessing from him. For this eminent task, Allah selects whomever he wishes according to his mashiat. And mashiat over here means according to his law. But together with this, it is also a reality that for people to receive righteous guidance through this wahi is also part of Allah's blessings. His door is open for every individual who wishes to receive it, i.e., only Anbiya used to receive wahi from the direction of Allah, but every individual could get guidance according to that wahi and can still get it. How great is this blessing of Allah that He has provided the means of sustenance for the physical needs of man in this way and established the process of wahi thus for the growth of his life at a human level. He is indeed the possessor of supreme fadl. Now let us look at slightly more detail on these two verses, remaining mindful of the universality of the Quran. We are reminded in these verses about a few general points in relation to the process of wahi, acquiring its education and training and then passing it on to others, whether contemporary mankind or that which is going to follow subsequently in the future. This means we need to remain fully aware of what we do today and what we are sending for our tomorrow or the life of the hereafter. These things look a bit difficult for somebody who is starting on this path, but gradually these become second nature, just the way we breathe every day. So this is not difficult, it only needs a bit of persistence. For this, we need to grasp the importance of two divine attributes, Aziz and Hakim. Whatever means we have at any point in time, we need to use these wisely for optimum outcomes. In fact, Quran explains itself in other verses, and through cross-reference, we can figure it out gradually. This is the fadl of Allah, and we have to come to grips with understanding this aspect. This is placed within our reach purposely as per the mashiat of Allah so that we can draw maximum benefit from our efforts in this life. And this is important because if we think this is difficult and not for me, I cannot be bothered about it, then of course we got a weak resolve. But then we should bring it in mind that my time in this life is finite. And if I'm not willing to strive on this path, then what am I going to do in the hereafter? Of course, one can say that initially there might be a fear, but gradually these things become second nature and we start enjoying our life and pursue it with more vigor and with more determination. And by coming together, of course, automatically comes into us that let us join with those who are on this path. By concluding the verse with the words, Wallahu Zul Fadl Azim, we need to pause and think, are we getting the best out of this life or not? Because Allah's fadl is available. If we follow the Quran, His bounties, His blessings, His rahmat, His means for our own self-development are there. And Quran is not asking us to change overnight. It says that once you have made this decision, for the rest of your life is available to you. Do it according to the pace of your desire, your need, and how you feel in the world. But don't give up. That is the important point. Next verse 62:5, not taking benefit from wahi is a failure of the human intellect. We have covered these points previously as well, but we will come across these, and these will be reiterated as we go through the Quran. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ حُمِّلُوا التَّوْرَاةَ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَحْمِلُوهَا كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ يَحْمِلُ أَسْفَارًا بِئْسَ مَثَلُ الْقَوْمِ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. But only those can receive benefit from the book of Allah who studied it by applying rational thinking and then act on it. By wrapping it in holy covers and carrying it around, nothing can be achieved. This is what Bani Israel did to the books bestowed by Allah, and their condition is before you. They were given the Torah and they were told that their duty is to act upon it. But what they did was raise the book high above their heads and sight, but did not carry out the responsibilities defined by it. An apt parable would be that of a donkey laden with books which it carries around all over the place. It is obvious that no benefit can reach that donkey from this. This is the example of this nation which verbally acknowledges the truth of the laws of Allah but falsifies it in practical terms. The degree to which such a nation is wretched is obvious. Such people who treat the book of Allah like this can never receive guidance. Can it ever happen that a donkey treads on the correct path merely because the book which is placed on its back has distinguished the right and wrong paths clearly within it? Very powerful example which is given in this book, and let us reflect on it a bit further. Elaborating a few points, after drawing our attention to his fadl, here the Quran has brought before us another fact of human inadequacy about which we need to remain aware as we proceed forward in this life of ours as students of the Quran. Next is, here the example of the Torah is used where people do not make use of the guidance provided by the Wahi of Allah, and consequently they end up not benefiting from the benefits and eminence associated with the obedience of the laws of Allah. Here the simile of a donkey is used not to degrade it as an animal, because donkey, it is not to put down a donkey. The Quran over here is saying the donkey has a certain tasks which can be carried out, but it's an animal, it works on instincts. And if it is trained well, then of course it will follow whatever it is asked to do. But in the case of human beings, the things are different. If we put some books over it, it is not any use to it because it doesn't have choice and intent. It is a creation for a purpose, but to draw our attention to visible human conduct in the world as a consequence of which we end up creating a world which is grossly unjust. So we should look at our conduct, that what exactly are we doing in this world, and that is why we got not a great world around us. We are continuously living in fear, uncertainty, chaos, and conflict, full of wars everywhere. And this is, if we accept this kind of a world, then that is fine. But there is an alternative available, which we are discussing through the Quran. In an unjust world, most end up not being able to bring out their latent potentials and hence never acquire a new life, which is so essential for further growth and development in the life of the hereafter. This also has serious consequences from living under a non-Deen system in this world, i.e., it is full of fear, grief, chaos, and conflicts. Let us go to the next two verses, 6 and 7, employing fear of death as a criterion. Qul ya ayyuhallazina hadu in za'amtum annakum awliya lillahi min dunin nasi fatamannawul mauta in kuntum sadiqin. Wala yatamannawnahu abadan bima qaddamat aydihim wallahu alimun bil zalimin. The state of this Bani Israel was that instead of seeking guidance from the book of Allah, they merely carried it around with them, but deceived themselves in their minds that only we are the chosen ones of Allah in the world. At a different state of Muslims today from Bani Israel of today as well as of that time. Say to them that if you are truly the closest ones to Allah, then wish to die on His path. This will be evidence for the truth of this claim of yours. But you will see that they will never wish to die because they know what kind of deeds they have committed, whose consequences they will have to face after their death. Allah is well acquainted with the state of the hearts of these kinds of criminals. Further reflections on these two verses, there is a lot in it, and I have very summarily and briefly covered it because these really need further reflection. After referring to the Torah in the previous verse, the Quran now helps us to understand the psyche of Jews, the psyche of all unguided minds who have concocted beliefs which are out with the wahi of Allah sent towards them. Like today's Muslims, they had also abandoned the guidance of Allah and had invented all kinds of false beliefs according to their own unbridled desires. One of these is that they are awliya Allah, i.e., companions of Allah, in other words, chosen people as compared to the rest of mankind. This belief still continues among them and among Muslims too. The state of sectarian Muslims is no different. They have also invented such beliefs which prevent their coming to the Quran, and even those who read it cannot comprehend it due to their contaminated minds. This is the cause for their cognitive deprivation in the world, and they can never ever come out of it without changing this psyche. As the Quran says, "Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim." I quoted it earlier as well. The outer world will change in direct proportion to the change in the inner psyche of a nation. This is the permanent value. Few more aspects on these two verses. The last part of the verse 62:6 points to a very important aspect of the human psyche in this finite life of ours. وَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. That if you are on this right path, you are the chosen people, then desire for death. And of course, death can be related to striving on Allah's path. And in any case, death is going to come. But are you ready for that? And if you think of the death and you are not fearful by using the signs given in Wahi, then it means that you are on the right path. But if the fear is there, then it means that there is something wrong somewhere. It does not at all mean to start to desire death over life. It simply means that with physical death being a fact of life, firstly, become conscious of its existence. That are we aware of it at every point in time? And this is what Quran does. Quran tells us that we have a finite time in this life. And that is why you must have seen that in our all presentations, we try to refer to it consciously. Secondly, be conscious of the higher purpose of life and the existence of accountability, i.e. the law of requital. And thirdly, follow the procedure put forward by the Quran to eliminate fear of it. Fourthly, always remind yourself that there is a deadline to this physical existence. Hence, to not only aim to acquire a new life, new self, but also to work together for a lofty aim defined in the light of Wahi of Allah. This is part of the procedure of becoming truthful and understanding the purpose of human creation. What will happen if you do not do this? Firstly, wander aimlessly after meaningless pursuits and gain nothing for the hereafter. Second, live continuously under fear of uncertainty of death and never being able to bring out those potentials which are meant to give you new life. And over here, we can see that 4 attributes which are noted in the first verse. We can relate to them. Refer to the divine attributes noted in 62:1. Al-Malik al-Quddus al-Aziz al-Hakim. Concluding remarks for these 2 verses. Then the next verse explains what is stated in the previous verse and points to the supreme reality of human existence in the world. Here, an important aspect of human psyche is pointed to in terms of a recipe for the treatment of fear in life. In the fear of death is not removed through Iman and solid deeds, then it is not dealt with at the level of intellect and reasoning based on the criterion provided by the Quran. Because fear has to be treated. What fear does is that it holds us back. It prevents from those potentials to come out in our life. And this is what Quran says. Quran says we don't have to even fear Allah, because the concept of Allah which is given in the Quran is based on laws and values. And we know that Allah does not go against his laws which are revealed in the Quran. So how much power it gives us, it literally makes us Aziz and Hakim, because then we become powerful, we become responsible for our own actions, and then we use this power, whatever we have, even within the man-made system, using the Quranic values. The criterion is the full awareness of the functioning of the law of requital, and then after becoming fully conscious of it, following the procedure given in the book conscientiously. because it makes us highly conscientious in our day-to-day affairs as well, even in our personal affairs as well, and in dealing with other human beings. Then carrying out incisive analysis of your own self, which should become developed progressively, and then it should create a desire to join with those others who are on this path leading towards the system of Deen. Just see the wording used over here is وَلَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. This is the beautiful statement of fact by the Quran, what your hands send forward. That is, if we somehow make ourselves fully conscious of our present deeds after acquiring Iman, then we will exactly know that where we are heading for as far as the rest of our life in this world is concerned and the life of the hereafter. Meaning that if you send good through your deeds, you will meet these outcomes later in the life awaiting your arrival. And I put a question mark because this is something we should think through it. Remember, if you do not follow this path, then the world created by your hands will be an unjust world. It is that simple. Now let us go to the next verse, 62:8. Avoidance of any thought about death will not make it disappear. قُلْ إِنَّ الْمَوْتَ الَّذِي تُفِرُّونَ مِنْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مُلَاقِيكُمْ ثُمَّ تُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ عَالِمِ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ فَيُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Say to them that the death from which you are fleeing like this will certainly reach you one day, and you will have to return to the law of requital of Allah, the law of requital of that Allah who has full knowledge of everything, secret and manifest. He will inform you what the consequences is of what you are doing. And it is a fact, if we look around all these people who do gross injustice and spread tyranny in the world, they are the ones who never think that they are accountable and they are going to die one day. And they also think that once they are dead, that is the end of it. So they think that they can get away with whatever they do. Over here, Quran is saying that you cannot get away with anything. What you need to do is try to understand what the Quran is trying to explain to us about the law of requital, law of respite, and telling us that you should acquire this understanding and then work on this, and you will be able to get Allah's help, that is the help of His laws, and will be able to progress towards the system of Deen. The Quran helps to face the challenges of our life. Having noted down the procedure in relation to the concept of death and its importance in human life in relation to the law of requital, here Allah has expanded it a bit further. The fact is that physical death is a firm reality based on evidence. Whoever is born biologically is going to die at some point. This is a recycling of biological ingredients in this world, which we witness in our life on a continuous basis. So there is a recycling plant working in the human world, and we can see it on a daily basis. However, pay attention to this fact that these verses are addressing you as an I, which is not going to die with physical death. It simply cannot die and disappear like animals. Just we should pay attention to these words. When the Quran says kum, it means that it is explaining to us the procedure of our own life for all times. That is, it is not taking into account that physical death which is going to come to our physical body. It is addressing that kum, which is an eye of my eye and everyone's eye, which is going to go forward. Because why? Because it is of a higher order and possesses choice and intent, which makes it responsible and accountable for what it does in this life. Try to come to terms with the reality of your or our existence. Instead of being fearful of death, address the issue squarely as we are explaining to you through the tasriful ayat in this book of ours. We can see that even within this surah, how succinctly the Quran has explained major issues of our own life. Allah being omniscient means that through obedience of His laws, you will achieve that lofty and eminent status for which you have all the potentials. All those latent potentials which are kept there to make this life prosperous and to help to advance higher in the hereafter will go to waste if the Quran is not followed. Verse 62:9, Deen needs meetings at appointed times. या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू इज़ा नूदिया लिस्सलाति मिन यौमिल जुमअति फस्अऊ इला ज़िक्रिल्लाहि व ज़रुल बैअ ज़ालिकुम खैरुल लकुम इन कुंतुम तालमून. Why did Jews become like this? Because it is the Jews' explanation was preceding this verse. It is because they converted the Deen of Allah into religion, the consequence of which was that their collective unity ended and Deen remained merely a name for the private relationship between Allah and man. O Jamaat-e Momineen, never do this. Keep your collective life alive and thriving because this is the demand of Deen. This is because, for example, when you are given the call to the congregation for Salat, then leaving all affairs, immediately respond to it, so that you can hear with your own ears what those laws and instructions of Allah are, for which you are being called and according to which you have to act. If you make use of even a little bit of knowledge and vision, then this reality will become clear to you how beneficial these congregations are for you. Iman brings additional responsibilities. I have put more than one slide to explain this aspect because I thought this is an important aspect in the system of Deen. Here the Quran has directly addressed those who have accepted Iman and have come together to strive for the cause of Allah. So acceptance of Iman is important because being born as a Muslim is different from accepting Iman using our own free will, through our own choice, without any external compulsion. It should be assumed here that the system of Deen is now in place. Because the way this verse addresses, I felt that as if the system of Deen in some form is making progress, or is shaping up and needs further fine-tuning, and this involves collective decision-making as and when the need arises. In initial stages, it may be more frequent. And the important point over here is that Wahi of Allah came over a period of 23 years. So we can assume safely that whenever a new set of values and principles came through from the Quran, some explanations, then there was a need to come together and understand it and then discuss it. And of course, they must be discussing it within the context of the system in which they were living. Firstly, the verse addressed Jamaat-e Momineen, asking them to respond to the call for Salat, which is for their own benefit. Now, this is a very important point which I have taken from Allama Parvez's explanation, Lis Salate. And the la over here, which is lam in Urdu, before that, it means what is coming after that, that is the Salat which is coming after that, is in which your own benefit is implicit. So wherever this is preceding a word, it means that we should pay attention that what is in it for us. As and when the announcement is made by the system to meet up, Yawm al-Jum'ate. So Yawm means the time, al-Jum'ah, that is that special gathering for which you are being called, that special time of appointment which is being made. Not a particular day specified for all times. But the command is when you are asked to come together to make certain consultations. Or as noted in 62.2, yu'allimul kataba wal hikmah. So if we see that from the beginning, after Allah has announced that everything is following His laws, then this issue of kitab and hikmah comes along, and then from that, this congregation is now materializing. It is emerging out of that instruction to provide further education and hikmat as further revelations has arrived, revelations have arrived, which needs our attention. Secondly, since it is very important, hence leave whatever you are involved in, though that is also important for your living. But, and see, this is how we need to look at it, that there is some physical activity going on. And now the issue of self has appeared. So from the physical side into the self-development side, the Quran is now saying and drawing our attention. And come to the place of meeting so that part of the Quran can be discussed and that you are mutually consulted in this matter. If you go through this verse, it's very instructive because over there Quran says that their matters are decided through mutual consultation. And unless we meet up, we cannot discuss these things, the pros and cons of every injunction contained in the Quran. Just note the attention diverted from the physical needs towards the need of the self. And if you look at another verse in Surah Anfal, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu istajibu. Again, this is an invitation here that those who have accepted Iman, Lillahi wa Rasool iza da'akum lima yuhyikum, that respond to the call of Allah and His Messenger, which will give you life. This call leads to new life. So this is important that we analyze it even in more detail and go over it again and again, when we might be able to pick up more points from the world in which we are living. Next is individually respond to a call for Deen as a system. Thirdly, respond to this call and compare it with what you are doing for your living, and come to this conclusion after attending this consultation that it really is for your benefit, individually as well as collectively. Individually, because as Momin, by coming together, will form a Jamaat Momineen, and since Deen is the name of the collective system, hence it will advance its cause by coming together. We can notice the change in human psyche demanded by the Quran, and how at the start of this surah detail is noted. Yatlu alayhim, that is, this is recited to you. Ayatehi, his signs, that is the Quran. Wa yuzakkihim, purification of the human self. Wa yuallimul kataba wal hikmah, through teaching of the Quran, and the purpose of every verse of the Quran, individually as well as collectively. Fourthly, we need to increase the vastness of our understanding and knowledge so that this becomes part of our psyche. And that is important. And it cannot become part of our psyche unless we think about it again and again, unless we are convinced about it and we say that this is part of my own self-development and for the benefit of the collectively. Just note the repetition of you 3 times in the verse. Zalikum, this is the one, that is you. Khairul lakum, good for you. In kuntum ta'lamun, if you acquire knowledge, then you will understand that what it means for you. This will give you life, not only for the rest of the life in this world, but of course the life of the hereafter. This is for you, and then it is stated that it is good for you. Finally concluded by saying that it should become part of your psyche by converting it into knowledge. When information reaches the stage of analysis and we accept it, then it becomes knowledge. That is, we come to know about its intricacies. What are the benefits out of this information, i.e., which is for your own good. And 21:10, in which Quran says, Zikrukum, that Quran is for you. Here we can see that this verse points to the importance of establishing Islam. And part of this system includes coming together as and when required to sort out issues in the light of Wahy. Of course, this will also involve discussing the non-Deen world and its challenges, including the opposition to the system of Deen. By asking Momineen to abandon business activity points to a system of Deen being in place in the land. This call to Salat does not appear to be in a non-Deen environment. So what I put down this comment and with a question mark, because this is my own hunch, this is my own assumption, that the way this verse is stating, it looks that in Medina, some kind of a state had emerged, and people were being called. Of course, those people who were the ones who mattered will have to come together and then listen to the new Wahy, our old message, and then try to look at various aspects which may not have appeared before them previously. Few more reflections on this verse. From this verse, we can also infer a few more important conclusions. The Quran calls human life as Sirat al-Mustaqim, which is the straight path proceeding forward, neither static, nor cyclical, nor unbalanced or weak. Here the Quran has instructed us clearly that for the coming together of Jamaat al-Momineen, they must have a goal pointing to a clear objective in life, not to just come together and do nothing and then disperse. We can see that even in our corporate world, meetings are not held without purpose. Every meeting has a proper agenda, and then people come over there prepared, and then they discuss it, and then they disperse, and then they execute whatever is decided in that meeting. Not aimless ritualized gatherings. Once such a meeting finishes, then revert to the visible struggle of life, that is from the self to the physical world and then also keep developing yourself while we are working in the physical world. The gathering is to look at those aspects which take Momineen forward towards the system of Rububiyyat and its strengthening. Secondly, nowhere in the Quran is mentioned of take a holiday every week. Human life under the system of Deen is dynamic, persistent, and striving. However, it does not mean we cannot take time off and travel through the land to learn more. However, the system which the Quran asks us to establish is the one which never sleeps and is alive 24/7 in every respect. That is why at a number of places in relation to Salat, the Quran is instructed to establish it morning, evening, and at night. Part of this striving is to decide on the timings as and when required for Salat timings. And we can look at this verse of Surah Nisa. Attendance is made compulsory as part of the system of Salat, i.e. the need to attend these should rise from the depths of our hearts and minds as Momineen have accepted Iman willingly. There's a lot more to it, but I'll leave it there and we can always discuss it in our question and answer session. And we can reflect in it in our own time as well by relating to the world in which we live. But one thing is very clear from this verse, it is not about wasting time. Everything in Deen is targeted, focused within the context of Deen and striving towards the Deen if Deen is not yet established. So it demands an extremely high conscientiousness from the students of the Quran who wish to follow this path. 62:10, never waste time as Momineen, this life being finite, get maximum out of it through efforts. فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. This is in continuation of the previous verse. When this congregation for Salat ends, then go wherever you wish and get busy earning a livelihood. But do not think that the domain of the laws of Allah was only confined to the extent of that congregation. You were informed and explained about these laws so that you remain adhering to them in every aspect of your practical life. Hence, now that you have come out for your business, keep these laws before you all the time. It is in these that the secret of your success is concealed. Let other people adopt whatever method they wish for their success, but you should always obey the laws of Allah for your success. Only this success can be declared to be true success. Because this success is for the life of the hereafter. This gives us true life, and that is the life. Once we acquire this life and we start looking at human creation from this perspective, then our outlook changes. The vastness of our consciousness changes. Efforts which do not produce results go wasted. This verse makes it clear that under the system of Deen, time is never wasted and all efforts are targeted towards achieving a clearly defined objective for which mutual consultation is made by coming together. Part of the procedure of self-development is that the physical needs of the members of the society are adequately met. The body is provided for a specific purpose to earn a living and obey the laws of Allah with a focus on Azkurullah. Whatever you do, keep in view that it should be in line with the book of Allah. Hence, knowing the value system is a prerequisite for this. And dhikr means not only human eminence, but it also means to keep Allah's laws always before and in front of us in our mind all the time. Dispersed throughout the land to benefit from the bounties of life which are kept there for the use of mankind. This should be in line with the permanent values, that is a part of Rububiyyat. This aspect of the verse indicates that Deen as a system is continuously evolving. If you keep following this procedure given in the way of Allah, then the results will lead to prosperity in life. Let us go to the last verse of this surah and of this presentation, 62:11. Distractions and temptations lead to weakening of resolve. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا فَضُّوا إِلَيْهَا وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا قَالُوا مَا عِندَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ مِنَ اللَّهْوِ وَمِنَ التِّجَارَةِ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. Because these people who have newly entered Islam are still not mature in their training, hence their state is such that when they see some opportunity for a profitable commerce or that there is some entertainment, then O Rasool, They leave you standing and run towards it. What this Quran is saying is that when people became distracted, it appears as if the Messenger of Allah was standing there and telling them about the revelation, about that part of the Quran which was important, for which they had gathered. Some of them left that meeting because there was some activity outside the mosque or wherever they were. And this should be seen in that context. But it is fairly general as well, and we can relate it to the word of today. Make them understand that whatever you achieve according to the laws of Allah is far more profitable than all this commerce and far more attractive than this sport and entertainment. Remember, the means of sustenance which is acquired according to the laws of Allah is greatly pleasant and beneficial. And if we relate to the present day world, and if a CEO is holding a meeting, and I don't think anyone in the meeting will leave that meeting if there is some distraction or some kind of noise outside where they can go and make some business. They will stick there because their livelihood is dependent on that CEO. So over here, what Quran is saying is that we should be even more concerned about it, because now we are working for Allah, who knows the secrets of our hearts as well. 60-11, some reflections. Since this system is evolving and some people have not acquired that psyche which focuses on long-term effects and outcomes, and some of you do not observe the discipline of an important meeting called to discuss matters of Deen. They leave the meeting by getting distracted by some events of immediate benefits. This is not good for their self-development. At this stage of the establishment of the system of Deen, if you take it lightly and leave the meeting called for to discuss issues under the wahi of Allah, then essentially it means that your priority is the attraction of the immediate benefits of life, not willingness to aim for a higher purpose in life, i.e. the Deen of Allah. Remember, the efforts made on the path of Allah do not go to waste, and striving on this path includes the means of sustenance and their availability in abundance. However, these will be achieved once the system is in place. Your striving at this stage should be viewed with this context in mind. An important aspect to note here is that the messenger is also a human being and never becomes distracted, whereas some others do. And that is an important thing to note, that Allah's messenger is human being like each one of us. And what made him stand there and not getting distracted? He was also a human being. He also needed to earn more for his family. He had physical needs as well. What made him stand over there and work for the system of Deen? And those companions who were closer to him, and they never left him alone. And these are the kind of thoughts which should cross our mind, and we should pay attention to it, because these provide strength to us. Now, over here, what I've done is, towards the end, schematic of the Surah Al-Jumu'ah. First is, the universe around us provides evidence of the functioning of the laws devised by Allah. His attributes provide guidance in the human world. This was covered in the first verse. The messengers were sent to provide guidance to people. Their task was to teach the book and explain it and help people acquire new life with a developed self to help establish Deen. They faced opposition, and here the example of Jews is quoted to illustrate this important point. Using death as a criterion, Jews are asked to wish for it if they are truthful in their claim that they are so-called chosen people. And we can use this criteria for us as well, that if we have a fear of death and uncertainty, that means we should work harder to understand the Quran, do more solid deeds, remain united, and work together, and see, like paracetamol helps to remove our headache, for example, then does it remove the fear of death or not? Then the Quran declares that they will never do this because of the evil deeds which they have sent forward. Here the link is defined between human death and deeds. Momineen will not do like these people, as they have understood the guidance of Allah. They join together to think through the issues of Deen and meet up at appointed times. Very important, appointed times must be, we should try to keep this in mind, that under the system of Deen, if we want to establish the system of Deen, then we have to come together at appointed time to discuss the issues of life. Because life is a serious matter. Time comes and goes. Weeks pass very quickly right in front of us. The years are passing by very quickly, and we should be very conscious of it, that this life is finite, and there is another life which is continuing at the level of ourselves, and we should be strengthening ourselves by following the values of the Quran. We are instructed to keep in mind both aspects of life, needs of the physical body as well as the self. When there is a call to discuss the issues of the self, i.e. Deen, then there is a break from physical matters. And we have seen that in this Surah Jumu'ah, there are only 11 verses, but it has succinctly covered the evolutionary process from individual to the collective system and its outline. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen. Thank you.